Hi guys. Uh, so I know the last recording I made the sound didn't work on it, so I'm trying to redo it. Hopefully this will work a bit better. Uh, I also know I haven't posted in a really long time, and also the book that I promised you guys, I think last month, has been delayed. There's a good reason for it. I've now partnered with Lauren, aka Zinnia Jones, who is helping me write it. So the scope of it has been expanded a bit, and it's going to be more comprehensive than I even originally planned, which for me was pretty ambitious. A lot of words. It's going to be even more comprehensive now, and I think really, really worth the extra time that we're putting into it. So please don't give up on it, and please check back because I think you guys will really enjoy it and find it extremely helpful. It's really the cumulative knowledge of both of us over the courses of our transition and our general learning about what transition is and can be. So today the topic that I wanted to talk about is kind of a top level, what have I learned over the span of the last almost 2 years that I've been transitioning. So it's actually been almost exactly 2 years since I first contacted a therapist about my transgender feelings. And I thought it would be important to take a look at least the top 5 things that I think I've found that are most important in my understanding, or the things that have been, I guess, my biggest revelations as I've gone. So, as is typical with a lot of my posts, it's in a list format. The first is listen to your inner voice. I wish somebody had told this to me before I started transition because it was just something that I refused to do for so long. I didn't want to believe what my inner voice was telling me, that I would feel better as a girl in this world, that it was something that I definitely wanted, and I came up with every excuse in the book as to why I couldn't or shouldn't have it. But at the end of the day, my inner voice was right. It was exactly what I needed. So first and foremost, really before anything, I've learned to listen to myself more, listen to what my innate needs were and are, and to trust it more. To listen less to what's outside of me and listen more to what's inside of me. And that's made a huge difference. And it was, finally listening to that inner voice was the catalyst for changing my life entirely and for the better entirely. So that's the first thing. If you have that inner voice that tells you that something's not right and something needs to change, listen. Listen to it carefully. The second, this has been a big lesson. Your fears about your future are not nearly as bad as you think they will be. And this applies to transition to a huge extent. Um, Before transitioning, you probably imagine every terrible thing that could happen will happen in the worst possible way, in the most embarrassing or traumatizing experience imaginable. The truth is, you'll have good and bad experiences as you transition, but if you're the type of person like me that seems to imagine the worst possible consequences before they do anything, your imaginations of what those consequences are wrong. They're just flat out wrong. And if you're operating and making decisions based on those fears and those projections of some horrible future, it's not an accurate way to go about living your life. You need to consider things as realistically as possible and understand that your future is not as terrible as you think it might be before transition. It's important to still be realistic, but just try and recognize when you're exaggerating your fears a bit. Because I know I did that to a huge extent. Before I took every one of those next steps, I would always project how horrible it could be or how terrible it was going to be. And it never met those expectations of being horrible. In a lot of cases, it ended up being wonderful. So that's a really important one, too. The third one, authenticity matters. It matters a great deal. And it matters in lots of different areas of your life. So for me, first and foremost, in my own personal happiness, it's very, very difficult to be happy if you don't feel authentic. You feel like every good thing that comes to you is not quite real. It just feels like you're living your life as, in the third person. And nothing really seems to feel like tangibly happy. It's a very difficult sensation to explain, but things come into sharper focus when you transition and when you feel authentic. And happiness is something that comes with feeling authentic and having authenticity. The next one, relationships. I would venture to say it's impossible to have a completely true relationship, a completely successful or happy or real relationship, unless you're authentic in it. You cannot be with somebody and hide a core part of who you are. It just doesn't work. In the long term, you can't fake it for that long. It ends up coming out. It ends up just seeping into other areas of the relationship, and it just doesn't work. So relationships, good relationships, true relationships, lasting relationships, they require authenticity and honesty. And if you're not being honest about who you are, they can't work. And I've seen this from both sides. I've seen myself in relationships where it fell apart because of my lack of authenticity, and now I've seen new relationships where it works completely because I'm being true to myself. The next and last part of that third one is confidence. So as much as transition can be a blow to your confidence in some respects, these new things that you have to care about or consider or worry about, just this innate feeling of being confident in who you are comes with authenticity. And it translates to lots of other areas of your life. It's not just about feeling real in front of the people you're present with, but it really has to do with it just makes you so much more confident. You feel like the things that you say have more weight to them, have more realness to them. At least in my experience, before I transitioned, I always felt like I lacked some sort of realness, and in things that had nothing to do with my transsexuality or my gender incongruence. Even things that were completely divorced from that, I felt inauthentic in the things that I said. And with finding authenticity through transitioning, I've found that I've gained a confidence level in additional ways. And it just has to do with feeling more authentic as an individual and feeling more real. Number 4, transition is not a cure-all. So if you go into transition thinking it's going to solve lots of different problems in your life, it's going to make you more social, it's going to make you, a better person, it's going to solve all these different varied problems in your life, it won't. All these problems need to be dealt with on an individual basis. What it will cure is gender dysphoria. It will help cure that. But don't go into it expecting that it's some kind of wonder drug for your personality defects and issues and problems. All those things will still remain. They'll just be less burdened by this problem, this gender dysphoria that permeates your entire life. And I think you'll find that things become easier. Handling things that maybe had seemed more daunting to you in the past will become easier. So it's not a cure-all, but it does make things a little bit easier. And the last one is, probably one of the biggest things that I've learned is that the world needs you. The world needs you to come out if you're transgendered, if you're a transsexual. People need to know transgender people, just like people needed to know gay and lesbian people in order to be able to understand and accept them. This world needs to know trans people. They need to know that they're, in a lot of ways, they're just so normal and so regular and like everybody else. And we're never going to get to a place of real acceptance if we don't have more trans people coming out and being vocal, even being disproportionately vocal. The gay and lesbian population had the advantage of having maybe 10% of the entire population being gay or lesbian. We don't have that luxury as trans people. It's a much, much smaller proportion of our population that's trans. So we need to speak disproportionately loudly and in some ways be vocal about who we are and in exposing ourselves to other people if we can. And I'm not saying everybody needs to do this. Each individual has their own specific situation, but if you find yourself in any way in a situation where you think it might be possible for you to speak out, even if it's just in a venue like YouTube or in a conversation with somebody, it's so important. Um, I just really encourage people who are trans to think about that as an aspect of their transition, or in their consideration for transition, is that you're living in a time that is transformative for transgender people. And by giving a little bit of yourself in terms of being a little bit more public than maybe you want to be, or being a little bit more open, you're doing a great service to the generations that come after us, and to the transgender people out there who are still confused, who still don't understand themselves completely, or are still scared to be honest about how they feel. There will be other transgender people out there who will identify with you and who you will make a difference for in their lives. And that's one of the most wonderful things that you can do. And it's one of the most rewarding things you can do also. So take that into consideration too, if you can. Alright guys, anyway, so I hope the sound worked on that one. If not, I'll try again. But sorry it took me so long to do this, and I promise I'll do another one pretty soon. Alright? Bye guys.